Starting lineup: Kled, Wukong, Heimerdinger, Fortune, Pike, up against Timo, Briar, Yone, Fortune, Yana. Rating of the picks for a casual game: Kled as a top, 9. Heimerdinger as a mid, 10. Fortune as a shooter, 7. Pike as support. Given the unbelievable performance that we've seen from Pike recently, despite the fact that I think he's not at all casual friendly, we're gonna bump him up from a 5 to a 6, so that is a 6 for Pike. Timo as a top, 6. Briar in the jungle, 9. Yone as a mid, we're gonna bump Yone up from a 7 to an 8, despite the fact that I think that Yone is somewhat difficult to play for casuals. And despite the fact that I think that he's a pure shooter, the unbelievable amounts of AoE damage that we have seen him do in recent games give him that extra point. So we're gonna say an 8. Fortune as a shooter, 7. Yana as support, 5. Briar came out in 2024 with the Hemomancer pack. League tends to make sure that brand new champions are rather overpowered than underpowered, so as to not waste all of their efforts in creating them, like we recently had with Pistol Girl. Briar's talents lie in extreme sustain as a vampire girl. The champion closest to Briar is Warwick. Briar is able to move in more unpredictable ways than Warwick, which means that she has a slightly better chance to take over games. Unfortunately, to tell the full story of the human experience, you also have to say Briar is a champion that not that many players can really identify with. If you're playing her, you're very likely to be chasing the meta in absolute sustain. People just pick her because she's indestructible in early game, not so much because they actually like her. Therefore, both the skill level as well as the mental age behind the average Briar player is 0. I have never met a mature Briar player. Moving on. First play, witness the Spike player slowly going insane as he's setting up everything perfectly and receives nearly no contribution whatsoever from this Fortune player. These Bone Skewer attacks are very difficult to pull off. Spike is a very fragile champion. Seeing a Pike player in a casual game is most definitely rather a bad sign than a good one. But from time to time you actually meet people who know what they are doing. Especially when this Fortune starts getting access to her bullet time, pulling them in with Bone Skewer and then hitting them with bullet time is a dream combo. As is so frequently the case, when you have massive damage output players and shooters, such as you would typically see in specialized professional players who control a Jin, who control a Fortune with a tremendous amount of efficiency, it would be worth it to give them a caster support to further enhance their abilities. But as usual here, unless you're going with the super overpowered Seraphine, who then still would be better as a mid, a caster support is usually not worth it, and here we see the same thing. Now imagine Pike facing off against Fortune and Warwick, or Fortune and Leona. They would have a much more difficult time. It requires great synergy to benefit from caster supports like this. Heimerdinger is gonna be brave and come over here. When you're in this kind of situation, you really expect more from the bottom lane than from Heimerdinger. It's understandable for Heimerdinger to be conservative. He's a control mage. Ultimately, he relies on the area that he's in. Briar has some kind of mobility, but the mobility that she has is rarely going to help her out of tricky situations. And you know that you're really positioning yourself in a very unhealthy manner when you burn through all of that regenerative capacity that she has. Such an absolute literal vampire, indestructible essentially in terms of regen. You see here this unbelievable goofiness as well, completely ignoring the dragon here and simply walking past him while he could have very easily obviously stolen it there. And the person who could have mainly cut this cord is blue team's Fortune here, who refused to essentially come over and partake in any of this jungle objective. Could have easily cut the cord and ended the suffering here, because it got pretty scrappy because she essentially stayed out of it and there was a total stagnation of just throwing on bodies. And very frequently it's also a form of apathy purely being caused by simply being ignorant what the consequences of these jungle objectives are. Yeah, great awareness here while I'm with the Drake. Kled is going to manage whether the grubs are going to get stolen. I don't understand why we don't see this more frequently. I do it all the time. I go down to the grubs all the time to get a free kill. When an individual, a jungler, is getting pounded on, even with wild regen like Briar, by 3 of these grubs at the same time. What is so beautiful about the grubs is that they don't really change target. So if you walk in, it's not like you're gonna get attacked or anything. And so when junglers are with the grubs, they're essentially completely vulnerable and there's no reason whatsoever in an average game for a tank, for a warrior, for a top laner not to come down, a Jax, an Aatrox, a Mordekaiser. You should come down and have a look every once in a while. You'll come away with an extra kill. I do it all the time. The grubs attack junglers. Once they're in there, essentially they're surrounded by 3 of them. You're gonna get them down very easily. It's a free kill. And this Briar here died 3 times for these grubs. This bottom lane affair here, very one-sided. Not so much a skill issue as a personality issue from this blue team Fortune. We have consistently this Spike doing amazing things. This is one of the best players that I've recently played with. And I'm gonna have to give her a hand here because she's entirely being abandoned by her partner here. And so I'll play shooter for a while. Come and help her out, get the kill. And these ultimates don't line up as well as Wukong and Yasuo, but they're still pretty damn good. They're still pretty damn good, whittling them down with the Wukong ultimate Cyclone, and then coming in with the Pike ultimate. Get that kill. Yeah, again, a lot of standing around here from this Fortune player. Gonna have to get in there, open up the lane. And Pike is gonna return the favor here. It really tells you a lot about the flow of this game when you see Pike manhandling Briar with as much crazy sustain as she has, to have essentially one of the weakest base stat champ come after her like that, jump her like that. Taking a look at the scoreboard here, and we see here on Team 1 that the 2 people who put together the smartest inventory and smartest collection of items have done the worst, relatively speaking, in output. It is unclear where this is going, but that at this point, Yomu is for you not the best option. I am absolutely convinced of, standing around the bottom lane tower, you most definitely were not jungling, you were most definitely not going up to the top, you were most definitely not rushing to jungle objectives. This is what Yomu is primarily for. And so what you get here really in Pike and Kled is tremendous mechanical skill and tremendous ability to control your character, together with inferior enemies. It is interesting to see you going with assassin items on Kled. If you've paid attention, you've noticed that the greatest advantage that mages have is that there is a one-stop shop. If mages need more armor, they go to the mage tab and get the hourglass. If mages need more ability cooldown, they go and get Blackfire and get more ability cooldown in the mage tab. If mages need more firepower, they go and get Blackfire and they get more firepower. If mages need more resources, they go into the mage tab and they go and get Blackfire and you get 600 mana on there. If mages need more better extra special effects and kill stealing, they go into the mage tab and they go and get Blackfire. You see that? The hidden secret of mages is that everything is always stacked together on a couple of items. They don't have to run around to collect a bunch of different things. If you've paid attention, you've noticed that on champions, like for instance Caitlyn, or for instance Ezreal, that are not mages, and that rely on attack damage, they are much more fanned out. You have, in terms of purity, if you need to have a bunch of survivability, you should go to the tank tab. If you need a bunch of attack speed, you should go to the marksman tab. If you need a bunch of ability cooldown, you should go to the assassin tab. And as I've so frequently pointed out, everybody ends up just only going to the marksman tab. Basically, the only two tabs that are in use are the marksman tab for attack damage and the mage tab for mages. Those are the two only tabs that are actively being used, practically speaking, in casual games. The tank tabs, the assassin tabs, and the warrior tabs. Warrior is really just a hybrid of assassin and tank. They are wildly underused. And so it is very uplifting to see a mechanically capable player go with assassin items first, because it's something that you won't see frequently. However, you will end up suffering from the same problems as everybody else when you're using this kind of defense strategy. Furthermore, this makes no sense whatsoever when you're going up against Teemo. Yeah, if you had to go to the arena and do battle and you could bring one item, what would you bring? Boots, of course. Boots. That's all that matters. Especially on a champion like Teemo that has additional movement speed, right? Just what we need is boots. Yeah, opened with boots too, here. Opened with boots too, here. So that is 3 out of 5 members that opened with boots. Moving on.
soon